Hello, Global Theater. My name is Jerry Fielka. Today's January 9, 2024. We want to thank Rob Grant and this amazing podcast. I'm probably wrong about everything. Just want to thank the general community at Palms Court for basically introducing me to Steve, our guest today, and to the great Phil Chamberlain, who we both shared a friendship with, and dedicate this show to him. So, Steve Effingham, where in the heck you calling in from?
Oh, Seattle. Cold old Seattle.
First question, Steve, is what is the best thing for a human being?
The best thing for a human being. The best thing for a human being. Air.
Air. That's a good.
Sustenance. Food,
Yeah,
food.
it's good. I rarely get the answer air. I get breathing, but I don't get air. So that's good.
And it's going in short supply. So it's really
Hello. What's your favorite form of information? How it comes into you?
Oh shit. I would have to say books.
Yeah. Did you become a reader because one, your parents told you to read, two, they did an example, or on your own?
I think on my own, finding, I grew up in the day of the cheap paperback.
Yeah.
So all over the house, you might find a Signet classic of Dostoevsky,
Wow.
Camus. They were just cheap little things, and they were around the house. And I was bequeathed by my older brother and cousin, shelves of like Hardy Boy mysteries.
Yeah.
None of which I could read. They were too hard for me. But you know what? Early on, I just loved the object.
Yes. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. Yeah.
The fact that you can tactility hold printed matter. I was just looking at a magazine I found in a Bennett's garbage can the other day. It's a 1929 magazine all about music.
Wow.
And it's mint. And it's just amazing. Like, are we going to be able to dumpster dive a thumb drive in 50 years and have something to even look at it? I can look at the printed matter in my hand, and go, how did this last 100 years and it's still kind of mint condition?
What fool threw that out?
Dude, what fool throws out anything? I found Griot magazine in a dumpster, dude.
Did you really?
Oh yeah.
I'll kill whoever.
I've told Venice street artists, I says, I found your art in a dumpster. They're like pissed. I'm like, well, it's great because someone else can appreciate it now, but it is sort of an insult,
Yeah, what the hell? I have a pretty lovely library. It's going to be someday in a dumpster.
Yeah.
What can you do? This shit goes.
Why do you think humans collect or gather information?
So that they know how to find directions to the stream so they can get some water.
Yeah. Is this need or want to collect info more innate or more invented?
It's an animal instinct.
Yeah.
Right. Even a dog is going to perhaps will remember a route to a certain essential location.
Yeah.
And then we discovered the joy of it. Now, the information gets us in trouble because we see it all differently.
Yeah.
And we begin to kill each other. Here we are. That's thumbnail philosophy.
Do thoughts create emotions?
Great one. I was just reading a book by Suzanne K. Langer.
Yeah.
A philosopher who wrote in the 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. This hits home for me. Ideas, emotions. Ideas come from emotions. Everything starts in the body. And the book is a real hard-ass book. I got to page 191 installed, and I got to force my way back into it. But the feeling, all ideas originate in feeling and impulse.
Wow.
Now that's useless to say because I can't articulate it any more than that.
No, that's great. We're a lot of this stuff will come back around, Steve. You'll see. The next one is fill in the blank. I don't know what I think until I
I don't know what I think until after I think it many, many, many times.
yeah. Well, McLuhan says, I don't know what I think until I say it. Joan Didion says, I don't know what I think until I write it.
But both of those instances, saying it and writing it, I find out later I think something different.
Yeah.
Yeah. It develops.
Yeah, it develops. When I asked my mom if I could interview her, she said, yeah, but tomorrow I might answer everything differently. I says, that's all right.
Right.
I'm not holding you to any of this, Can humans think without language?
Yeah, of course. Yes.
Yeah. Chomsky says a language is not just words. It's a culture, a tradition, a unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community is. Steve, what do you do when language doesn't work? When language breaks down, what do you do?
Well, I tell you, I would never second guess Mr. Chomsky, but the way I see it's interesting. Language is constantly morphing, but also language is not ever bounded discretely. Language, by necessity, merges, and it's kind of like almost like a liquid in that it spreads and changes, and language is always exploited. The earliest priests exploited language for power, and language is also the most basic way to transmit feelings of love and poetry. So language is this thing, and it does many, many things. Good, bad. It's the reason we're fucked, and it's the reason we want to be alive.
Yeah. Really well done, man. You're a wordsmith. You are a poet. That was very poetic. But in general, your observations of humans in general, are we more feeling beings or more thinking beings?
I mean, I don't know that I'd want to make that dichotomy.
Yeah.
Frankly. I mean, on a basic everyday level, MAGA people don't seem to be thinking beings.
Yeah.
But I think essentially the essential human being, I think it's all kind of, I don't know. I can't place that question. I'd have to think about
it. That's, first of all, it's me and you versus the wording on the question. So I'm open for you to say, I can't answer that, or I'm not sure, or it's both. That's fine. One time a woman goes, the word more doesn't function in your question. I goes, that's good. Because when we invented the word thinking, we invented the word feeling, we thought we could separate them. But indeed, I agree with you. You can't separate them. They're so connected that you can't. But 80% of people do say this. I think we're more feeling beings. So right off the bat, they say, I think we're more feeling. So that's a kind of,
yeah.
These are two questions from Alan Turing in the 50s. One, is thinking a function of the soul?
I would say that the soul is an idea.
Yeah.
So thinking as you think soul.
Yeah.
There's no substance of soul. It's a thought.
Yeah. Two, can machines think?
And I would say not as a human being thinks.
Yeah.
A machine can come up with answers that you don't expect. But I think what we're doing is what we're doing. Maybe that's beyond my technical expertise. Maybe I could be turned around on that. It almost seems irrelevant to me because I don't care what a fucking machine is going to do. Although I'm scared to death about what it's going to do.
Yeah.
Do
you more pursue meaning or more pursue happiness?
I'm trying to learn to pursue neither. It's about process.
Wow, that is great. Yeah, I got it from Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. He says, meaning tends to last and happiness doesn't necessarily last.
See, this concept about the ideas and emotions and feelings being ideas, it leaves me in a quandary because everything, therefore, is subjective. It brings me to that place where,
Yeah.
but however, language has a certain function. If there was a fire right now, and tell me how to get out of here,
Yeah.
language would instruct me, go through that door.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm starting to feel like I'm floating here, so I'll stop and reel it back in.
Yeah. And it's, we'll get to poetry, but T.S. Eliot says, when I talk to you, I got to use words. And it's not true. Me and you, I mean, you've communicated a lot to me by me seeing your hands, but there is words coming too, but it's a combination.
Sure.
Does the brain more detect consciousness or create it? It's like, is consciousness there bubbling away and we're more so detecting it or more so creating it?
What we think is consciousness is a product of the function of the brain.
Yeah, that's good. What's faster, speed of light or speed of thought?
I don't know. I don't know.
The poet Audre Lorde says, you can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools. Yvonne Rainer responded to her and said, you can if you expose. She says, you can if you expose the tools. What new tool do you suggest?
Well, first I want to say one thing about her statement. And the kind of conversation we're having, first of all, is very difficult to land in a solid place. So it's kind of nebulous. But yeah. I was struck by C.R.L. James and the Black Jacobins. And here was this African American, really, historian who wrote this monumental history of the Haitian Revolution using the technique and the methodology of a traditional European historian. So wow. He took their acts and created a masterpiece exposing the reality of the politics.
Yeah. That's heavy.
And there's a second part to it as well. Language, who is to say, who gets credit for a language? No individual, no institution, no power owns, there's no such thing as the master's language.
Yeah.
So you can't, so therefore you don't throw out the baby with the bathwater necessarily.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a tough question because.
Yeah, basically, just to clarify, Steve, I open some of these questions with cue quotes. It doesn't mean you have to apply it. Yeah, but here's the thing. It's like more like, what tool do you gravitate towards? You can apply the word new if you want, or
sure,
dismantling the master's house, but that's the basic question.
I have certain intellectual directions that I gravitate towards, certain artists, certain poets, writers, historians, musicians that I try to mine for information. But in terms of what say it again, what I gravitate towards.
What tool do you gravitate towards?
For me, it is language.
Yeah.
Because I'm not a touchy-feely person. I'm not spiritual in the sense that a lot of people mean it in. But when I work with the words, you can make things happen that you didn't expect. And again, it feels like magic.
Yeah.
You can create things that you didn't know about before. You can write something that's smarter than you are.
Oh, what a great line. I need that line.
So, yeah.
What new toy do you suggest?
Toys. Okay, a toy is something that you play with to have fun. I would say language, life, whatever. I mean,
that's it. That is good. You get it. What do you worry about when you go to bed at night?
Oh, shit. Not finishing the things I have to write before I die. The current political scene scares the shit out of me. And probably some other things, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
McLuhan learned from a poet that artists are the antenna of the race. They're broadcasting and detecting the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, so we might learn how to cope with what we don't like about our inventions. And so, Steve, I asked you the question Marshall probed his whole career. Why do we ignore the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, even though the artists are broadcasting them to us?
Well, I think, pardon me for, not falling in line with Mr. McLuhan, but I think that it's idealistic what he's
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah.
And I think, what are the reasons that human beings do the kind of things they do, group in the type of groups they group, exploit each other, et cetera, and so forth? That's another question. Greed.
Yeah.
People want power.
Yeah.
And they manipulate. I mean, that's the big question.
Yeah.
In anarchist theory,
Yeah.
it's common sense for me and you to cooperate and to help each other.
Yeah.
Because if I'm flourishing and you're flourishing, we can help each other to do that. But there's also the other recurring factor in human society. There's always someone that wants what you have.
Yep. You're really comprehensive. I'm appreciating what you're teaching me, Steve. Do artists have moral obligation?
I would say no, because that's too subjective.
Yeah.
I feel the only way that I would love to help make the world better. The only way I can do it is to look inside of myself and to listen to what's in there and to put that out. I can't write what you want me to write or what anybody else wants me to write. What I have is here. I can put it out. And that's the only thing I can give.
That is heavy.
I march. I do all those things. I'm not saying I'm apolitical, but in terms of how I see my function.
Are you more afraid of new ideas or more afraid of old ideas?
If they're probably the same thing, and if they turn me on, I love them.
Can you conjure up your earliest memory ever or one of them?
I remember it being 3 years old in Queens, looking out the back window of an apartment building at a concrete driveway. And then I remember crying because the Litzenberger twins pushed me down the stairs.
Oh my God. Most people have the first memory as a visual, but I love your second one, crying.
They're contemporary to each other, but they came together separately. Like I had to find out about the Litzenberger twins. I vaguely see it. They were snotty kids.
Is memory more a curse or more a blessing?
It certainly isn't either. I mean, it's one of the groundings of our lives.
Yeah. Tell me someone within your immediate family, then outside your immediate family, just briefly, who had an impact on you, kind of like a role model. And what specifically was that impact?
Well, I tell you, that's a hard one. Like a role model.
Or just an impact, someone who...
They all affect you.
Okay,
they all inflict you. You know who I always used to think? There was a fellow years ago. He used to play. He was Sam Taylor. I don't know. You might remember him.
Oh yeah, I know Sam Taylor.
I was like a friend of his. I would go to the gigs and I would talk to him at the gigs, and he was just such a wonderful, respectful, intelligent guy. I always felt he just always inspired me to just be a better person. I don't know. That's about as close as I can get.
That's a Venice blues player, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, inside your immediate family, just one person who sort of had an impact on you.
I would say I can't come up with any. I have a beef mostly. You know what I mean? I don't think there's any individual that I could remember that I would. I love people, but no,
that's fine.
Role models, no.
Did your parents raise you a particular religion?
Oh, marginally. I mean, they were in the community. You had to be respectful. My mother would have to be respectful. You have to join the church. Her family came from Puerto Rico, and they were in the Bronx. And the first preacher that knocked on the door was a Dutch Reform preacher. So she grew up in the Dutch Reformed Church, which is a Protestant thing. We moved to Long Island at a certain point, and I was sent to a Lutheran church.
Yeah.
All very cursory, marginal. I had my first sexual experiences in the basement of the church. I mean, it was nothing that penetrated
Yeah.
at all. Matter of fact, I used to go to listen to the sermon, little kid, and I'd be sitting in the pew, and I'd be saying, and I say, talk to you later when we're away from all these hypocrites. As a little kid, I was really alienated.
Wow. Do you pray?
No.
If God exists, what would you like God to say to you after you die?
It's such a harmful myth. I don't even play with the idea.
Good. Okay. Do evil people exist, or does evil use people as a vehicle?
Evil ain't nothing that can use anything. There are people, we do things that are antisocial, that hurt each other, but evil per se is no, does not exist. And, okay, but what about, so, yeah, evil exists in the sense that Hitler did evil things.
Yeah.
But evil as an entity that's lurking, evil that can do something, or no, doesn't exist. Myth. A tool made up by priests.
That's, I heard Bob Guccione Jr. say that once at a lecture. He said the church invented the devil as a marketing tool.
Yeah, well, there you go. Yeah. And as a reason to slap your ass in chains.
Yeah. But, the hidden question really here, Steve, is how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? And I'll set it up. Alan Watts says, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them. Coppola stole from the mob and the samurais, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. JFK said, forgive your enemy, but don't forget their name. And Fellini says, I need an enemy. So it's a lot of thoughts. The basic question is how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? But first, how would you respond to Alan Watts? If you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
For all of the things, all the people you just quoted, in each instance, there would be a psychological sense to what they say.
Yeah.
Don't acknowledge your enemy. Well, is it the little boy over there who's calling you a poo-poo head? If you ignore him, that's better. Scorsese, who's the one that said keep your enemies?
Coppola.
So that's kind of a real good, actually, he made the famous mafia movies. It's a real good mafia quote, isn't it?
Yeah.
But that's real power politics.
Yeah.
Each one of those can be placed in a psychological context.
Yes.
So
but how would you advise someone to deal with an enemy?
It depends on what type of an enemy it is. If it's a little boy calling me a poo-poo head, I would say ignore him. If it's somebody who could hurt, who I would have to keep close to me because they're my enemy, why would that be? Because I'm engaged in some sort of a situation that puts me in that circumstance. Maybe I need to leave the situation. That's too subjective.
Yeah.
And there are too many varied circumstances to fit the question. You'd have to give me specific instances. I'm not trying to be a dickhead.
No, that's fine. No, the basic follow-up is Nassim Taleb's quote, games were created to give non-heroes the illusion of winning. In real life, we don't know who wins or loses, but we can tell who a hero is. My friend said, well, villains don't think they're bad. They want control. Heroes want freedom. Gregory Bateson, talk about psychology and anthropology. He said, when the criminal gets caught, does he go, whoa, my criminal skills weren't up to snuff that day? Or does he go, wow, I did something morally and socially wrong? So again, it's a lot of prompts, but the basic question is, does punishment work?
Well, Jerry, I think that those are all too generalized questions for activities that are very, very specialized.
Yeah.
The criminal, I mean, a criminal could say a dozen things, 100 things. I don't think that those questions are either too broad or just are not specific enough.
Yeah. But let's go to someone like Trump. If he gets thrown in jail, cannot run for president, writes a book and says, I'm sorry, I did wrong. Would you forgive him?
Oh, no. No, I wouldn't forgive him.
Yeah.
I think he's irredeemably damaged goods,
Yeah.
and he's a danger.
Yeah. And you brought up anarchy. I'm curious, the great social labor activist Utah Phillips and folk singer says anarchy is making rules for yourself and not other people. Who's entitled to make the rules?
Well, you and I, let's say we're taking a road trip together, and it would be the anarchistic way to go about it is you and I would make the rules together.
Yeah.
If you're dealing with someone else, you have input into what you're all doing.
Yeah.
If you're by yourself, but there's sense to what he says. I have to make a rule for myself that when I go into the room, I'm not going to take too much of the beef stew. That's my rule for me.
Yeah. That's good. What's the difference between rights and responsibilities?
Well, boy, I tell you, the terms, I think I'm very pragmatic. I respect you because, no justice, no peace. I think you you have a right to live and grow and flourish as a human being. And in order to get that, you need to afford everybody else the right to flourish to the same thing. So I could say it's my responsibility to treat you right, but it's in my interest to treat you right.
Yeah.
And my right is to live and flourish and develop as a healthy human being.
Yeah. What's the difference between rebellion and revolution?
Well, revolution, hypothetically, is when you turn the system over and you change the system. Rebellion is where you make an attempt, you rebel on a given day, and that you, I guess the January 6th was a rebellion.
Yeah. How do we keep our governments from going to war?
We get rid of them.
How do we do that?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if in the last few years I've not gotten pessimistic. I don't know if it's age or what, but I don't know how to change anything.
Yeah.
It's funny. I went to 5, 6, 7 years ago. I went to the Hardly Simply Bluegrass.
Oh
in
yeah.
San Francisco. And there was me and my friends were there to see Peter Tosh in this particular location because there's stuff all over the park. And so they canceled it. So we're going, let's leave. And there were all these kids. They're saying, don't go, man, don't go. This next thing up, you're just going to love it. It's really great. It's political. All these children. And I'm talking like teenagers, early 20s. So we stayed. Now, I'm a real asshole here because I don't remember the name of the group now. It was a guy who was half Puerto Rican and half Hawaiian. And he had a band. They played jazz. They played hip hop. But he was political.
Yeah.
And the kids, these children, were just, they were enthralled. They were pumping their fists. They were with every wonderful thing the guy was saying. These kids were there and they were eating it up and they were giving it back to him. And I tell you, I was there with an Oakland high school teacher. She had retired. Were blubbering because these kids were so beautiful. And my thought then was, I will never give up the fight if there's some youngster that is still putting their ass on the line. And still
Isn't that such an inspiring story? Yeah, Steve, I'm open for anecdotes, tangents, stories. That was a beautiful story. It inspired me. There's a socialist, John Basil Barnhill, who said, where the people fear the government, you have tyranny. Where the government fears the people, you have liberty. The movie V for Vendetta paraphrased that. People should not be afraid of their governments. Government should be afraid of their people. The question is, how do you personally handle false fears? Like, the war on drugs. You can't have a war on drugs because drugs don't fight. And you can't say no to drugs because drugs don't talk. So, how do you handle these false fears? The war on drugs, the war on poverty, the war on terrorism.
Well, I mean, it's a huge political question that you and everybody in Venice has been dealing with for the last 50 years, because those are the war on drugs was an oppressive device used to target a particular group of people.
Yeah.
So it was political, it was oppression. So the question is, how do you handle oppression?
Yeah.
We've been struggling against it for a long time, and nothing has worked. I don't know.
Yeah. Don't stop and keep going is what Frank Zappa said. I think that's good words, but it does get discouraging. Steve, walk us through your tipping points to become a poet and a novelist. What are you studying in high school and college and reading where you go, oh, I want to do that. That's my calling. I'm going to pursue that. Where's some of your tipping points?
Well, so I don't know, but the answer is, I remember as a kid, and I must have been like 13 or so. My brother, who was 5 years older, was part of the blossoming counterculture. He actually worked for a alternative magazine.
Yeah.
And he would get lots of stuff in the mail, pamphlets and political things and Ginsberg's poetry. He even had, because he worked for a magazine, they even sent him Bukowski books and all this stuff. And he had it in a bookshelf about so high, like behind me. And he had a rug in front of the bookshelf. And I was allowed to go I wasn't allowed in the room, but I could go in the room and sit on the rug. If I went 1 inch off the rug, I'd get punched in the arm. But all this stuff was right in front of me. And so it was really, I got an idea. It was interesting stuff. Ginsberg and Bukowski and, the Weather Underground and everything was in this, all the stuff he'd collected from his magazine. I know later on, but the real answer to the question is it was all music, because I didn't know that art existed until I heard John Coltrane as a teenager. And then I realized there was something beyond. There was to make music was to make magic, was to go to another place. And that's what made me. And then I was a little jazz freak. This is really funny too, because today through YouTube, I'm discovering lots and lots of music that at that age, when I was all jazz, I refused to let a rock record touch my turntable.
Wow. Wait, what age? That's heavy. What age did you get Coltrane about?
15.
Wow. And you never got into rock from that point? Or
I stopped with the Cream, and I went to Fillmore East and saw Janis Joplin. I liked 10 Years After, but then I discovered in my brother's room, again, same thing, a little rug. You go outside this rug, you get punched. He had Miles Davis, Working and Steaming with the Miles Davis Quintet, Oscar Peterson Trio live at the Stratford on Avon Jazz Festival, Paul Butterfield Blues Band, which I love Bloomfield. Yeah. He had 145 of Otis Redding doing She's Been Loving You Too Long, but it had a scratch. So I would sit there and listen to the same 10 seconds of it over and over and over again. And he had an old B.B. King record too. Nice. So I guess that, but then later, I found Coltrane through Miles, but then I went to the record store, and then I started discovering it at the record store.
Yeah.
Just one more funny one. I find it strange. Coltrane Plays the Blues. I got when I was about 15 years old, and there's 2 cuts on there that I used to listen to, and I used to fantasize those being played at my funeral.
Oh my God.
And it wasn't because I was, alienated or sad or suicidal. It's because I thought they were me. It was me. He's describing me.
That is heavy. So can you forget to die?
If that means that your flesh will keep moving afterwards, no. If it means your flesh will perpetuate forever because you forgot? No, you'll die.
Yeah. So then when did you start writing poetry? Well, again, did you study creative writing in high school and college?
Nope. Nope.
What
You
did
know,
you study in high school and college?
oh, high school, just, high school stuff, but college, I was a history major, and I knew I always could write. And the reason I knew I could write is because I'd show up like in high school at a final exam, maybe even college. They'd give you a little booklet, and I wouldn't know what the hell the question was about, but I'd fill that little booklet. I in one of those tests, I guess it was 11th grade, 12th grade finals, I wrote a little essay, um, something like, and even the worst prostitute will believe that somebody understands. I was just spinning it, but I was feeling it. It's like I could do that. And my English teacher, who didn't talk to me much other than that, said, "It was a pleasure having known you," she wrote on the test.
How
I just
nice.
knew that I could spin it. When I say spin it, I don't mean spin bullshit. I mean I could get it started and go. And that's
But did it become something that you could make money? Did you started writing record reviews or anything?
I did it. I'm 70 years old and ain't made a dime on it.
On your writing, you've never made any money.
No, I might have gotten $40 here or 20
Yeah.
there or something. But I wrote record reviews in college so that I could get free records.
Yeah.
And that was in the 70s, and the record companies would put you on the mailing list, and you get boxes of jazzery issues at your doorstep.
Yeah.
It was heaven.
Well, what was your day job for your career?
Well, actually, for most of the time, I was a proofreader.
Oh, that was your day job for what?
For law firms and for the longest time for an accounting firm. And in the accounting firm, it got the proofreading kind of went to the side because it was all boilerplates. So I ended up adding up numbers all the time. Very mindless. And during all those years, for better or worse, I did that because I wanted to give all my stuff to my writing.
Wow, that's a smart move.
But,
I know
as a halfway intelligent guy, I'm not the brightest, but I would be in these jobs so long, and I would show up and I would do my job. They tried to promote me. I would explain to the boss many times, I do this because I have to. I'm a writer.
Wow. So you started writing poetry at what age?
Or I don't know, but I'll tell you this: I had to write a little obituary for a friend that I'm going to send into the Beachhead because he was a Venice person named Bob Wells.
Yeah.
So I had to go through old Beachheads.
Yeah.
And the archive, first of all, the Beachhead archive is just a gift.
It's amazing.
And I have so many old friends. It's like going into another world. It is just so wonderful. But I think it was 77. I came across a poem by Steve Effingham, and it was a poem for Albert Eiler.
Are you kidding? So 77.
The Beachhead was my first people who published me.
Oh my God, an Albert Eiler poem.
Yeah, I think it's 77.
I just had a meeting this morning with my friend. I'm going to send you. We just released, we do music together, and he's like 25, and he's a complete jazz bow. And this is freaky. We're starting the song that we're working on. I sort of composed it and arranged it, but he arranges it and executes it. And he's really good. He went to Peabody. And it starts with Ghost. It goes like dun 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 dun.
Right.
And then it breaks right into a funk groove. But I said, start the riff of Albert Eiler's Ghost before you go into the funk groove, because it's like it's spiritual. And
good thinking, man. Also, good idea. Just
nobody's going to get it until you hear it when we get it done within the next year. And I'm going to say, Steve, here's the track that we talked about. So let's go to your poetry. A screenwriting teacher told me great art is when you can clearly see the intention of the maker. Kubrick says the opposite. Great art is when you can clearly not see the intention of the maker. What role does intention play in your creative process when you're writing a poem?
Well, you know, it's interesting. When I started out, I have all my heroes. I was interested in language poetry. I was interested in chance operations,
Yeah.
and a lot of the New York school and stuff that where intention was suspended completely.
Wow.
And I also early on, one of the ways that I wrote was, I guess you'd have to say, Kerouacian, in
Yeah.
that I wrote, and it was rhythmic,
Yeah.
and it was and it flowed like a jazz line flows.
Yeah.
It flowed, and I did it based on feelings and thoughts come. So there's intelligence, but you're pushing the carriage down the hill, and it takes off.
Yeah.
At this point in my life, or for the last few years, I'm more interested in composition than jazz soloing.
Wow.
And
You've come to,
intention is the crux, the meat, the flesh is the freewheeling jazz solos, but the composition is the crux of it.
we call that the nut meat, the chewy caramel center.
In other words, yeah. And I also was really, I don't want to say trouble, but the whole concept of meaning, meaning for me was something that was discovered as the process proceeded.
Yes.
But then that precludes a longer piece, a longer cohesive piece. So now I'm very interested in form, cohesive, shapely form.
Yeah. Duchamp said there's no art without an audience. How much are you thinking of your potential reader when you're writing your poem?
Not at all.
Yeah.
Furthest thing from my mind. I think it's a death sentence.
Yeah. What's the function of poetry?
Well, poetry is song. Song brings joy. It's a distillation of intelligence. These are what it is. What the function? How do people use it? You know, I wrote a poem that I in one of the griots that I looked at recently, and it was a very valiant attempt. I went to a place called the OK Hotel here in Seattle 15 years ago, and Charles Gale, remember Charles Gale?
Yes.
The saxophone player, plays very much like Albert Eiler.
Yeah.
He had a gig there with a trio, and so I walk in, and the music, it's in this. Actually, the OK Hotel was a 1890s old hotel on the waterfront that the gold miners used to, like, it was a flop house hotel, but they had a big ballroom in it, like in an old Western saloon. And the guy would have concerts back there. Matter of fact, that's where Nirvana and all those groups started out with their all ages shows, I guess the 80s. And so I walk in, and the music was so beautiful and so profound. To me, the analogy would be philosophy. It was so gorgeous. It was philosophical. It had these beautiful meanings, right? So that's the first set. So in the first part of the poem, I try to establish how beautiful it is. Second part of the second set, Charles Gale gets up with his microphone, and he gives a evangelical screed against abortion.
Wow.
And the audience, this is a young Seattle audience, all kind of progressive kids.
Yeah.
And, why are you disrespecting us? Why are you doing this? And he's arguing with the audience with all of this crap.
Yeah.
And so the second part of the poem, I knew the guy who recorded it that day, and I transcribed it. I just transcribed everything he said, and I put the people responding to.
Yeah.
And then the third part of the poem, I couldn't bring it home. This is where I kind of failed, but the intent was to show. I used the image of Mussolini dancing with his eyes closed, weeping to a folk song, dreaming of his mother.
Yeah.
So beauty, truth, from an ugly bigot.
Yeah.
And so now I don't know what the point of that was, but somehow I responded to your question.
No, it was all a function of poetry, because here's a couple quotes by people about poetry, and I'm just wondering your thoughts. Kenneth Rexroth, who read at Venice West, eventually became Spandau Gallery. The purpose of poetry is to woo your lover and subvert the bourgeois.
I think that's lovely, but that's his take.
Yeah.
And both of those make sense. He was a very romantic cat. He loved the Greeks and he loved to write about Greek mythology. And he was an anarchist, revolutionary.
Yeah.
That's perfect for him.
Yeah. Here's Leo Bersani, is a literary critic who wrote a study on Mallarmé, the symbolist.
Uh-huh.
The very crises which threatens the writing of poetry sustains poetic composition.
Kind of like saying blues music justifies oppression of Black people. Certainly suffering creates art. Is it necessary? I don't think so necessarily.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, you know,
I feel like I'm all over the map, to be honest with you. I'm almost uncomfortable because I'm saying shit like right.
Steve, it's totally fine. That's what I'm after, us just exchanging ideas.
It's fun. This is
yeah,
fun.
and here's one of my favorites is the meaning of the blues is the Black man is walking down the street and he has one shoe in his hand. And the white man comes up and says, "Did you lose a shoe?" And the Black man says, "No, I found one."
Interesting.
And the other one is Ray Charles learned from his grandmother. Blues is no, life is like licking honey off the thorn of a rose. So this is the other poetry quote I wanted you to just give me any thoughts. This is Gary Snyder. My task as a poet entails the work of seeing the world without language, then bringing that seeing into language.
It makes sense for Gary Snyder, right?
Yeah.
He loved, he saw a lot of things in nature, and he would go out, he could see, and then he would put it into words.
Yeah.
These things are not, can't be taken as maxims for all humanity. They're individual circumstances based on the individual's context.
Right. And I'm for, always expanding. In fact, I learned this from McLuhan is you don't just settle for an axiom or a maxim or an aphorism. You kind of try to reinvent it. So Marshall did it so well with Robert Browning said, "Our reach should exceed our grasp," or "what is heaven for?" And Marshall said, "Our reach should exceed our grasp," or "what is a metaphor?"
An interesting thing, take the poetry of Wordsworth.
Yes.
So all my life, he was an impossibly boring poet, impossible to read. Then I read a book about revolutionary romanticism, and they put him into context. And I began to realize at that point that there was a political context to what he did. And once his work was in context for me, I realized that it's wild, great, political, beautiful, truthful poetry. The one thing about poetry, the way it's presented, it's as though the context itself was poetry, as opposed to the specific thing that the poet's saying.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense, but to put Wordsworth in a book of English poetry, but not tell me what the context of the poem was, I'm never going to understand it.
Yeah, that's form and content. That's context. That's so important. That's Gestalt therapy. That's everything, figure ground. It's all things. McLuhan had a great line. Understanding is not having a point of view. It's not saying Wordsworth's poems are good or bad. It's trying to understand the big picture, the context they were in, and then we start to make these value judgments. Well, I like this or I dislike that. But I bringing up Wordsworth, I have to tell you the joke I learned from a great Venice Boardwalk person. He says, "What's a poet's Wordsworth?" He says, "About a pound." And so McLuhan says everything we invent extends some humanness, or he called it a human sensorium. So knife and fork extends our teeth. Shutter in a camera extends our eyelid. Maybe philosophy or religion extends our consciousness, non-tangible. What does the writing utensil extend for you? Whether it's a pen or a keyboard, what humanness does it extend for you?
It's a tool.
Yeah.
Much like a keyboard or a saxophone.
Yeah.
That I can stimulate new thought.
Yeah.
And learn about the world, and perhaps create a gift that I can share.
Yeah. Beautiful. So Leonard Cohen says the only way you can sell a concert is if you put yourself at risk. And if you don't do that, people know. Mm-hmm. What role does risk taking play in your creative process?
Well, I think you're trying to push the envelope. You're trying to discover something you don't know. And that's the risk you take. And the risk is failure.
Yeah.
And I have put all my eggs in this basket in terms of my view of my life. So, I mean, there were periods when I would go to write and I'd be kind of scared.
Yeah.
I got to do good here. I got to do something. I don't feel that at this stage of my life.
Well, that's funny because I love Frank Zappa's line is, "I'm a failure, but I'm not a miserable failure."
I'm beginning to appreciate, and actually you helped me because I got the 2 albums that you suggested to me.
Grand Wazoo and Waka Jwaka.
Yeah. And I think it's an ongoing study for me.
Yeah.
I listened to lots of podcasts about him.
Yeah.
And today I saw an interview with Don Preston.
Good.
Keyboard player.
I interviewed Don too. He's a great guy. He's amazing.
Really, really interesting fellow.
Dude, did he say, he played with Elvin Jones and he basically he's credited in some books to helping Coltrane change because he went backstage and talked to Train once and he said, "Train, you've reached this pinnacle. You've got to change. You got to push it farther." And that's where Coltrane went into his second stage. Now, whether Don...
That's very lovely wishful thinking.
Right, but that's Don. He's not taking credit. He says, that it could have been part of it. It's a zeitgeist, but it is. Sometimes you need a little prodding. And Don is a great
Picasso that he needed to get out of that figurative shit and get into a little more abstract.
But Frank played with Philly Joe Jones. He played with Rahsaan Roland Kirk. He played with, Shelly Manne. It's endless how many jazz guys he's played. He brought Archie Shepp on stage in the 80s to jam with them. These are rock and roll kids. They don't know who Archie Shepp is. That's pretty amazing.
Remember, I saw a quote from Bill Graham.
Yeah.
Because he would have jazz players. He'd have Miles and all this stuff. Yeah. And he, relating to the audience one day, or just talking about the audience, he says, if they want their dessert, they also have to have their vegetables.
Oh, that is good. So Viola Spolin is a very interesting character. She was doing social work in Chicago as a social worker. She did role-playing exercises, and it eventually led to kind of spawning the comedy improv movement, which was Second City, the Groundlings, Saturday Night Live. And her line is, if the audience cannot see your struggle to achieve something, they cannot root for you to achieve it. What role has struggle played in your creative process?
Trying to write something that I haven't written before, trying to write something new. My ethos has always been, oh, pound, make it new.
Yeah, that's good.
Because when you let the process go, you discover things. It is like a machine that you could, you could push, throw into the air, and it flies.
Yeah. Well, let's go into music for a little. This is my friend said the 3 T's of music are theory, technique, and taste. You can learn the structure, you can learn how to play it. How does one acquire taste?
I don't believe personally that taste is relevant. To me, music is food.
Yeah.
And I go to the sustenance.
Yeah. But how do you determine, or Annette and Albert Eiler is your food and someone else determines some other person is their food? How is that determined?
By what you hear. I told you that story, I think, when we were talking one time at Palms Court. When I was 19, I went to the Newport Jazz Festival.
Yeah.
And Ornette played.
Yeah.
And I think I think it was the band with Dewey Redman. It was like, all these, I think Charlie Hayden was there, all these great people. I'd never heard them before. And I was just confused. I didn't get it. I didn't know what it was. I wasn't angry, but I was mystified.
Yeah.
And I left. I remember walking out, looking over my shoulder, wondering what the hell is he doing?
Yeah.
I went to the little town, and it was just thousands and thousands of hippies, because that evening the hippies were going to shut the entire festival down. They were going to riot. But I could hear his alto lilting over the hill. About 6 months later, I renewed my subscription to Downbeat magazine, and I chose a free album of Circle with the Hole in the Middle by Ornette.
Yeah.
And I began to listen to it. And before long, it was as simple to me as a lullaby.
Wow.
I just heard it. But one other thing that's very important, and this was important with Albert Eiler too, I had a desire to hear it. I had a desire to understand it. And I listened to it until I heard it.
Yeah. Well,
I wanted to know.
What's the roots of your desire? Where does that rooted in, this desire? It seems it almost goes back to that sitting on the rug in front of your brother's books. It's like there's a desire. What's the root of that desire?
I don't know, but I will say, and this could, we probably need, you need a psychologist degree and 5 more hours for the next thing. But as a kid, I was very, very alienated. And I thought all grown-ups were like just full of shit. But I didn't revolt. It was all in here. And, my friends were not very impressive. Yeah. My love of jazz was always me by myself.
Yeah.
I didn't have a bunch of friends who came over and listened to jazz records. I had lots of friends out there.
Yeah.
But this was something I did this is strange, perhaps.
Yeah.
But I remember driving in a car with some high school buddies, and John Lee Hooker came on the radio, and they all started laughing hysterically, going, "Hey, that's the Big Bopper," And I'm there thinking, "You asshole! All this other shit you listen to, they stole from this guy."
Exactly.
So I was alienated, and the music, it was my music. I was by myself. The fact that it was black music was important because all the people around me who were white didn't know the truth, and they were all racists.
Yeah.
That component was very important to me as a kid. And so I kept it. I don't know, I'll leave it at that,
but that's heavy. But how'd you understand that sensibility that they were being racist? How'd you learn that? From your parents or from your community? I mean, how did you learn that?
Well, first of all, think of the time that this is happening was the early 70s. You turn the radio on. There was a black radio station. You turn the radio on. I think it was WRVR in New York, and they had political shows.
Yeah.
There was a show called Latin Roots with the DJ Felipe Luciano was an ex-young lord, and he played salsa music, and he put it in a political context.
Yeah.
And so I got a lot of it from what was happening around me.
Yeah.
But I could tell there was a difference when I listened to the Cream doing Crossroads.
Yeah.
And when I heard a black musician doing it.
Yeah.
Honey Boy Edwards, I don't want no woman who don't know how to rob and steal. What do you want her to do? Kill herself working in some farmer's field? There was a context to black music, blues, that was historical.
Yeah.
And was life sustaining, that the rock and rollers didn't have.
No. Well, some of them, yeah, it's amazing, but it's really deep what you're saying to me, and it makes me want to tell you what I read when John Lee Hooker died. They asked him, why do you wear sunglasses on stage? And he says, because I don't want my audience to know I'm crying. Now, his music, it always kills me because I tear up when I say it. His music to me is joyous. And it doesn't mean his tears are sad. He could be doing what James Joyce called laugh tears. He could be, it's an emotional release. My mom taught me crying is getting toxins out of your body and also giving you an emotional release.
Yeah. Here's another one. This is a reach, perhaps, but Barbecue Bob.
Yeah.
And I played this for Tina, my wife. And I'm a poor boy a long way from home. I'm poor boy a long way from home. No, I'm a poor boy standing on the road and crying.
Yeah.
I don't have no blues. I just can't get satisfied. Now, I got to say something about that. My take on it is he's standing on the road in the South. He better get off the road soon. There's directions he can't go, like Robert Johnson, the Hellhounds on his trail, or Bloodhounds.
Yeah.
And actually, I played the lyrics are kind of stereotypical, but I played it for Tina, and the way he sang it, she goes, "Whoa, man!" Like the cat. He means that. That is, like, he got it over. But it's speaking about an experience that fills the music with meaning. It's such a great world form that it exists all over the world in a variety of forms. But the blues I like to listen to mostly is older blues, where it was. I'm going to stop there. I feel like the way the conversations go, I'm talking so spacey. My head, I'm just like all over the map.
That's what I'm after, to be open. It's totally fine. You're doing great. I love it. But you were going to say something. Go ahead.
No, I actually said it. Just the music. But the funny thing is, that little boy that didn't let rock records get on his turntable. I'm astounded constantly looking at YouTube because someone mentioned something and you pull it right up, right?
Yeah.
How the music, rock music in the 60s and 70s, so much of it belonged on the same festival stage as the jazz that was going on, because it's so similar in a lot of ways. Yeah. And then also finding out how all these rock musicians knew all these jazz musicians. They hung out together. They respected each other. And, as a little kid, I was ready to go in a camp. The journalist told me to go into this camp and that camp. And Ginger Baker, I like Ginger Baker. But Ginger Baker, Elvin Jones is better than him.
That is good. Yeah, they hit hard, man. And Ginger came out of jazz. He was a motherfucker. But, yeah, nobody hit as hard as Elvin. Elvin's the godhead. But, Steve, this is Ben Ratliff. He is a jazz writer, music writer.
Yeah, I read some of his stuff.
I mean sound. He says this. I mean sound as it has long functioned among jazz players, as a mystical term of art, as in every musician finally needs a sound, a full and sensible embodiment of their artistic personality, such that it can be heard at best in a single note. So me and you can hear Miles and go, that's Miles. In Ben's summarized it in a couple words. He's fragile and pointed. He says Coleman Hawkins is mellow and generous. Coltrane is slightly undercooked and urgent. If a music writer was summarizing Steve's poems and novels, you're writing in a couple words, what 2 words would you be happy and go, hey, he kind of got me?
Okay, there's two answers to that.
Yeah.
The first thing, the bulk of my poetry, and I want to write more, but I've been on doing the novel thing for a while. The bulk of it is from 20 years ago. The best stuff is like 25 years ago. And I look at that, man, was I a troubled dude.
But wasn't your poetry doing something good for you?
Yeah, well, it sure was. It sure was. You know, it's funny because in 1989, I left LA.
Yeah.
I had did my final performance at Ed Pearl's Ash Grove in Exile.
Yeah.
That's at that gig. I had Nels Klein on guitar.
I know. That's amazing.
Roberto Miranda on bass. They improvised, and I had 2 actors read the stuff.
Yeah.
And all the people from my proofreading job showed up, and my Venice friends showed up, people from Palm Court and all this type of stuff. And I wrote all poems the way that I thought I was supposed to write it. Right?
Yeah.
I told the truth. I let it all out. I didn't care about language. You know, I just told the truth.
Yeah.
I look at that shit now and I go, my God, I showed my ass. Like, I cringe. No, but that's that. I stand by it all. I stand by that writing. Yeah. I'm just today a bit more distilled.
Yeah.
I probably have the same exact issues. One of the things I think I tried to tell you this one. This is something I can never quite get over because I can't remember the entry. I had a notebook. I pulled it out in 1983. And in the notebook, I did a little screed. Same type of things I say today. You don't write for the public, you write for yourself. And if that means you're never, ever going to be published or never be read, it's okay. I don't care. I don't want to be published. I don't care. Something like that. I wrote in a notebook. So all these years later, I was talking to my friend Bob Wells. And I said, Bob, you know, I found in a notebook that I read it to him. And I said, and here I am. I'm 60 something years old and I've never been published and I've never done it. He goes, success.
Well, it's that you're not bummed. That's beautiful. But I would say distilled is one good word, or show my ass. Those are 2 capsulations that you might say. Those are the words that you might get.
And, you know, also to put it, to be, you know, to brag.
Yeah.
Some good ass poems, man. They swing.
Yeah.
You know, they're really well written and gritty as hell. And
that's good. Those are good words. Gritty, swinging. So good. You answered the question. Very good, Steve. What was the motive of the cave artist? Your hunch or your guess?
Wait. What do I think the cave artist's motive was?
Yeah.
Same as Renoir's. Because he or she probably had his, Bobo is the painter because he's the one that likes to do it and he can do it well. And Bobo probably developed a skill. If you look at some of those old cave paintings, some of them are pretty accomplished.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's the same reason that anybody does art.
Yeah.
And the monetary aspect all comes late.
Yeah. Well, here's 2 of my film heroes mantra. Ignore yourself. Jonas Mekas says there is no self-expression. In fact, Cecil Taylor says I'm just a vehicle and this stuff comes through me. Is art making more self-expression or more you're a vehicle for whatever technologies, environments, and cultures are dominant?
So whatever artistic utterance you make is you.
Yeah.
It comes from you. But you are a vehicle, and concentrating on yourself ruins it, destroys it. I have to be careful. If my ego flares up, the creativity is over.
Wow.
You have to make it. You have to absent yourself. not to the degree necessarily that John Cage attempted to absent himself in his chance operations, but you're writing to get out what's there and to let that machine operate. Your methodology is supposed to prompt this process. It's the process. And if I think about myself, I'm screwed. If I think about you when I'm writing, I'm screwed.
Yeah. Can art making be egoless?
It can't, to the degree that if there was no ego, a puff of smoke would happen and you'd be gone. But you do attempt to okay, Kerouac, right? Don't stop to think of the words, just look at the picture better.
Yeah, it's good.
You know, there's a job to be done, and there's a methodology to it. Employ the methodology.
Yeah, that's Mallarmé said, don't paint the painting, paint the effect that you want. What's more important, Steve, conviction or compromise?
I guess I could spin it around, but compromise is very important.
Yeah.
Conviction, I'm not too enthralled with.
Good. There's no right or wrong answers, but that one you got right. Thank you. In your accomplishments, how do you rate these three elements, luck, skill, and ambition? What played the biggest role in the second?
How do I rate luck, skill, and ambition?
In your accomplishments, yeah.
It depends on what your intent is.
Yeah.
Get back to the ego. If your intent is straight, none of them matter.
Yeah. Good. T.S. Eliot said poetry is outing your inner dialogue. What language is your inner dialogue in?
What language is my inner dialogue in?
Yeah.
English.
It's more metaphorically, what form is your inner consciousness in?
I don't get it.
Okay. That's all right. Is perception reality?
I would say, again, this is all subjective and all over the map. I would say no.
Yeah.
Because if you punch me in the nose, it's a fact that you punch me in the nose. That's reality.
Yeah.
Reality is a basic thing, but there could be 10 people in the room and they could all see it differently.
Yep. Lewis Carroll says, I believe as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast. Have you believed in any impossible things lately?
Well, I believe I can finish the current book I'm writing. That's impossible.
That's good. In fact, you'll love this. Sun Ra was quoted in the New Yorker magazine of all places. The impossible attracts me because everything possible has been done and the world didn't change.
That's right. Yeah, that's a good one.
You answered this, but I'm going to ask you it anyways a little later now. Tell me one major element of your creative process, your creativeness, that's changed, and one major element that stayed the same in the years you've been doing it.
Well, I write with a plan now. And I think in terms of composition, where in the past I thought more in terms of spontaneous prose.
Yeah. Moshe Feldenkrais works with healing and movement. He says it's literally possible to identify a weakness and incorporate it to become a strength, rather than we're usually taught to overcome a weakness. Tell me a weakness you turned into a strength.
Gee, I don't know. That's too high. That's too deep.
It's all right.
I have to think about that for a while.
Fill in the blank, Steve. Anger can be a productive emotion when
it motivates you to do, when it propels you to do something productive.
What's the most significant difference between men and women, physical aside?
I would say none whatsoever.
That's the answer I love to hear. I agree. That's really cool. What caused matriarchy?
What caused matriarchy?
Yeah.
Well, my take on it is all of the archies are about power.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean,
That's fine. There's a line that goes, you create what you resist. The comedian Bob Goldthwait morphed it into you are what you hate. In fact, James Joyce said it's a curious thing how your mind is super saturated with the religion in which you say you disbelieve. Louis Buñuel nailed it. He said, thank God I'm an atheist. So any thoughts on this line? I'm not saying you, but you create what you resist. One creates what one resists. Any thoughts on that line?
No, I think that's true. It's interesting. Since Christianity was, the example, I grew up in such a marginal circumstance that I didn't go to Catholic school or any of that stuff. The stuff isn't as heavily imprinted on me as others. But recently reading a great book, Raoul Vanagan,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I got this when I was in LA over Thanksgiving at the Small World Bookshop.
Yeah.
And it's called Resistance to Christianity. And it's an encyclopedia of heresy from the beginning until I think the 17th century or something like that. And it's a great, massive tome. It's like I still have 200 pages of it left. But he lays out at a certain point in the book, this is the punchline, he, after laying out all this stuff for the history of Christianity, really is what it is, and the history of early Judaism. He goes, around the year 200, the historical Jesus was invented. And man, I was like, yeah, wow, woohoo! It was so liberating. And not because I believe in Jesus or not, but because it is so endemic in this culture. It is just marinated in this thing. And it was just, I just thrilled.
Yeah.
Reading that line.
I appreciate your expertise in reading and passing on this knowledge to me. It's really cool. And in fact, we got about 10 more minutes and it's really been fun, Steve. These are 5 questions from Alan Watts, just briefly in a couple words. Number 1, who started it all?
Me.
2, are we going to make it?
We have.
3, where do we put it?
Here.
4, who's cleaning it up?
No one.
5, is it serious?
As serious as your life.
like James Brown says, serious as cancer. How do you find peace of mind?
Peace of mind is an illusion.
It's good. If you were walking down the street today and you met yourself as a 12-year-old, what would you say to your 12-year-old self?
Well, I'd say, get the fuck out. No. I say, kid, I don't have time to help you.
Oh my God.
That is too long, man. It would take too long.
That is a great question. Like, I'm obsessed with this line from James Brown, and maybe you can give me your opinion. It goes, I don't need nobody to give me nothing. Open up the door, I'll get it myself. Right, now, before the open up the door, is it implied he's saying, I'll open up the door and get it myself? Or is he implying you open up the door, I'll get it myself?
Or is he implying in this racist society we live in, if I can get through that door, I'll take my own.
Like, open up the door. If I can get through it, I'll get it myself.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah. I'm obsessed with James Brown as a lyricist as well as a musician, because how could you write? This is like Cole Porter or fucking Irving Berlin. I've got a move that tells me what to do.
You know that one where he's I forget the name of the song, but the line is, I don't know karate, but I know crazy.
Easy. I love that line. Which way should toilet paper come off the roll, over or under?
Over, definitely.
If a publisher was to release your autobiography off the top of your head, what would the title be?
Shit.
That's it.
I don't know, man. I don't know.
They want to scent. They want to scent the glue in the binding. What smell?
No smell.
If a statue was built in your honor, where would you want it displayed, and what would it be made of?
Oh my God. There ain't gonna be no statue of me.
Tell me something good you never had and you never want.
Something good I never had and I never want. Aye, aye, aye. So something good that I never had and I never want. I could come up with an answer, but not that quick.
Yeah.
Because there must be something good that I never had, but that I would never want.
Well, you know the three answers I get the most? Fame, money, and heroin.
Well, they work.
Yeah.
They'll work.
If you
I
were
don't
in
know
a
if heroin's good. I don't. Fame's not good. No, I don't want those either.
yeah. Well, you know, I mean, it's all again. It's some people think this is good, and some people. Okay, if you were in a vat of vomit up to your neck and someone threw a bag of shit at your face, what would you do?
I would try and dodge.
Yeah.
That's all. Because apparently I can't move if I'm in I'm probably passed out.
Yeah.
You see, in a certain sense, I'm a very literal person, which is
Yeah, that's fine. That's it. Everyone's unique. Steve, this has been truly enlightening. I wanted to go back something you brought up earlier, the word archive, because I'm doing research on this word and this action by human beings. The two basic questions before I set it up are, is archiving more innate or more invented? And do you have plans for your own archive? But here's the roots of the word etymologically, 1400s, keep safe, free from harm. Archives, 1600, records preserved as evidence. You know, it's based in that word, Greek town hall, public building, the first. And then the flip is be here now, Ram Dass. Live in the moment. Wyndham Lewis said, the artists live in the present and write a detailed history of the future. You know, why should we save stuff and collect stuff when the point of life is to live in the moment? So is this need or want to archive more innate or more invented?
Well, the archive, which is a material form of memory, can assist us in living in the here and now. And the perfect example, because I tell you, I don't want to be banal here, but I was so because I knew so many people who wrote for the Beachhead over its existence, to go into that archive was magic. But another important thing, the 60s and the early 70s were such intense periods of political change, cultural change. People were being killed behind it. It was a true spiritual upheaval, but we can't retain the memory of that. It's not really on the table today in terms of our understanding. You go into the Beachhead and you read all these things, and you get a real sense of how crazy the 60s were, and how intense, and how real, and how serious it was. And it's so that knowledge is in the Beachhead. You can be reminded of it in the archive. And of course, That's what archives do. They hold this information so that you can use it in the here and now.
So that you can use it in the here and now. That is a great answer. I love that. But do you think it is more innate or more invented? Because the Egyptians put these things in their coffin with them. Is that innate to archive, or is it invented by humans?
Well, with the Egyptians, it was kind of a misnomer. It was a false belief that the person could take these. It was religion, but I think human beings have probably always save something to use later.
Kras, yeah, Krasner said, I only believe in reincarnation in one of my past lives.
There you go.
Now you have an archive. You put out Griot, the great journal in Venice, and you have copies and you have your poems from way back. Do you have a plan? Do you just figure your wife's going to do something with it, or do you have it going to an archive, or any plans for your own personal archive?
No, because I don't think when I die, anybody would be interested in it. I'm looking over here at a bookshelf. In 1978, I started writing notebooks. I would write 3 or 4 a year. And I have every notebook from every year up until currently. I have one right now. Those are probably I don't know what I'm gonna do with them.
Yeah.
You know, maybe I fantasize I'll burn them with me or something. I don't know, but I can't see anybody, unless my book I'm currently writing now becomes important, and then people would care to know. But that's not,
That's Joan Baez's documentary just came out, and they asked her, you have any archive? And she goes, yeah, I have a storage that my mom saved everything in, but I haven't opened it in 50 years. And so it was a gold mine for the filmmakers. And they're sitting there with her talking about the film. And she goes, well, what are you going to do with your archive? And she goes, I don't know, throw it off the side of a hill. I don't care. And her assistant goes, oh, no, we're negotiating with the Smithsonian right now.
That's right. The Smithsonian ain't going to call me. But one of the things that my archive, I go to it all the time. There's material in there.
You use it.
Yeah,
I use it. It's a living organism.
That's right. Yeah.
Beautiful. What's the cultural shift you see developing today that inspires you?
There's a real ironic and interesting thing going on. After George Floyd, it seemed like the cat was let out of the bag. I've spent the last 40 years plus studying the history of slavery, the history of Jim Crow, the concept of race. Now, and I've got shelves of books, and that's one of the things for a variety of reasons that I've done with myself. This is the first time ever that people are suddenly coming out with all that information, and all these questions are being asked. It's a renaissance in cultural self-discovery. At the same time as it is the worst reactionary threat we've had, that in my lifetime.
Yeah.
It was very ironic that both are going on at the same time.
Yeah. Very good.
All this great shit is happening at the same time that a horrible reaction is happening.
Well, I think what I learned from Frank Zappa is you embrace contradiction, that you can learn from. So what's one question that remains unresolved for you?
I hate to sound pat, and I sure don't know anything, at all. But I just for me, it's not a matter of questions. It's a matter of pursuing my path. When I write, I told you about composition.
Yeah.
I have a story, and today I have to get Jerry from one part of town to the next.
Yeah.
I start out that day going, why is Jerry going there? What is he going to do there? What is he going to do when he gets there? But wouldn't he do this? No, he wouldn't do it. And I proceed by a series of questions in terms of composing stories. But I don't have questions. I mean, maybe I could say the question is, what will happen?
What will happen?
Will we turn into another Nazi Holocaust situation? Global warming sure seems like we're not taking care of it and is irreversible. That part of me is really struggles because of how dim things look. That's why it's important for me to look at young people and say, I ain't going to leave you.
Yeah.
As long as you believe I'm with you.
Yeah.
But I
like that. What will happen? But I wanted to clarify one word. You were saying pursuing my path, PATH, or pursuing my PAST, past.
I think, well, I meant path, but it's the past is intricately involved.
Yeah, I was just
Absolutely.
curious. Yeah. How has writing shaped your behavior?
It's made me given me an excuse to embrace my loner self. It allowed me to go into my little room and not see human beings.
Billy, well, or no, not Billy, Thornton Wilder in 19.
Not Willy Wonka.
No, I said Billy Wilder. No, Billy Wilder's got a great one. I always say, he says, "I just hope they like my movie as much as the popcorn." But no, it's Thornton Wilder. You know, he wrote Our Town in 1928. He said, "Art is confession. Art is the secret told. But art is not only the desire to tell one's secret, it's the desire to tell it and hide it at the same time." You've laid your cards on the table for 90 minutes, Steve. I'm not insinuating you haven't already answered this. What's it really all about for you?
Well, in terms of Wilder's statement, writing for me is not confession, and I'm not a confessional writer. I take the material of my past and I transform it into something useful today.
Yeah, that's beautiful. What gives you the most optimism?
A good day of writing.
Beautiful. Sure been an honor and a pleasure, Steve. I just want to tell
Same
you
here,
that
Jerry.
the first question was I got from Wilhelm, my friend who studied with Wilhelm Reich. What's the best thing for a human being? He said the best thing for a human being is another human being. And the last question is, what gives you the most optimism? That's what they asked Groucho Marx at the end of his life. And he said, other people. So it's sure been fun spending this time with another person. And I got to tell you one quote I love by McLuhan. He says, communication of the new is a miracle, but it's not impossible. And I really felt that what you told me today spurred me on, like you said, to transform and come up with new ideas and new thoughts. So thank you so much, Steve.
Thank you, Jerry. And I knew this would be a ball, and it was a ball.
I'm going to hit the end broadcast button, but I hope we can keep talking forever and ever. Thank you so much.
Take care, Jerry. Thank you.